Hey Lovemuffins, welcome back to Life with My Beloved. So, with everything that's gone on with COVID-19, so many parents found themselves in quite a predicament while trying to determine what was the best way to continue their child's education. Well, I consider myself one of the lucky ones. Ever since we've been on our stay-at-home order since March 13th, my child has only missed 2 days of actual educational time due to COVID-19. Want to find out how I find myself in a pandemic-proof school? Stay tuned. So a little background story. Since the beginning, my children have not been in any type of traditional educational setting. So no daycares, no Head Starts, no private schools, no regular schools, public, otherwise none of them. Because I've been fortunate enough to first be a freelancer and now be an author, and I write for myself. And that means that all of my work is done from home. And because of that, I've been able to schedule my days so that I can be mom during the day, an author at night, and I've had a supportive partner in doing so. Still, when it came time to determine whether or not we were going to put our children in traditional school, traditional public school setting, private school setting, or otherwise, there was a lot of discussion going on in my house about whether or not any other options were not just viable, but were equivalent. So what I found is that my husband and I were going back and forth about whether or not to even attempt something outside of what we consider the norm, which is a public school program or a private school program. Well, for us, private school wasn't a part of our options. It just wasn't. It was something we looked at, but when we crunched the numbers and paid attention to what was best for our family and our family finances, that just wasn't something we could commit to. So our other option was public school. Now, we have some very good public schools here where we live, but there was still something nagging inside of me that just wasn't as comfortable as I would have liked to have been, to say that I was going to send my child to this place for 6 hours a day. I wanted to be extremely comfortable with the choice that we made, and I wasn't. So after a lot of give and take, we decided that I would homeschool for preschool and we would figure out another option for kindergarten. So we did homeschool for preschool, and it was definitely a lot tougher than I originally thought it would be. It took a lot of time, took a lot of energy and resources, finding things like educational curriculums, finding things like other sites and free resources that we could use to supplement for what we already had, manipulatives, the list goes on and on. But we made it through, and I would definitely say that I learned a lot from that experience, and it gave me an even greater appreciation for what our teachers do on a day-to-day basis while they're trying to sustain not just one child, but between 19 and 20 children in the class, especially those who work with kinders and preschoolers. It's a fun age, but it is an extremely challenging age when it comes to things like focus on activities that aren't necessarily within their normal day-to-day ideas of fun. But we did the hard work, we learned a lot, we made some great choices, and our daughters have been great because of it. Now, it came time for this year. Our oldest is a kindergartner, so I have a kindergartner, a 4-year-old, and a currently 2-year-old who'll soon be 3. So really my numbers will come out to something like a 6, a 4, and a 2-year-old. Trying to keep everybody occupied is its own vlog. It is a whole thing, so I'll definitely get into that later. And every time I say definitely, I just want to laugh, because I don't even use definitely during my regular conversation. It's only when I'm talking to y'all, so I don't even know what that is about. So we'll dive into that at some other time, I guess. But one of the things that I noticed was the school that we picked, that I was absolutely crazy about, suddenly didn't have availability. And we found out about 2 weeks before her kindergarten school year was supposed to start. Devastation reigned. We were on vacation at the time, and I'm on my smartphone trying to figure out how we can register for another school, who we need to talk to, are there other options, could we possibly squeeze into the school of our choice? Chaos, chaos, chaos. And after a lot of discussion and a lot of talking, and a lot of really just not being happy with each other for a while we were trying to figure out the best method to educate our child, it came down to something that had to have a bit of a middle ground. And that's where we found our virtual charter school. Now, first, we were still at a loss. To give you an idea of how it works here, the virtual charter school that we have, that we are part of, is part of what's called a K12 school system, which means that it is a virtual school, that there are classes online for our child for things of the major subjects like math and ELA, English and Language Arts, but there isn't a physical classroom. We still do all the work from our house. We looked into it a lot more, and they still have all the public school standards, so there's still 6 hours of school a day. There's still statewide testing where possible or when necessary. There's still benchmark testing, and they still have to have a certain amount of attendance, or we would be liable for things like truancy. And then the part that part is probably my husband's favorite part, is that there's all this accountability that can line up to really show what your child is learning versus what playtime we might actually have, I guess. I don't know. But for me, the part that was still the clincher is that they provided all of our materials, and then they went on to do things like offer a lot of support to parents who they call learning coaches. Your learning coaches, whoever is going to work on a day-to-day basis with the child to teach them whatever the lessons are. They provided newsletters to keep us on track, to make sure that we could use things like newsletters that we could use like lesson plans. They provided things like their curriculum books, readers, every single thing that they thought that our child would need in order to succeed in a more traditional setting was simply mailed out to us and sent to our house. We even have supplemental materials for things like our arts program, where my child gets to study the arts, different variations on art, and some of the great artists that have gone before her. There's even a music program that we were able to use to supplement in case we had days where we did all of our schoolwork and there was still time to fill. At first, it was a bit overwhelming, to be honest, to have all these things at your disposal and have to figure out how to use them as the school year went on, because as many of the bases that were covered, there are still things that took a little outside work, and this is where I'm happy that I did the homeschooling before, because I already have a list of resources or a list of places I could go to for my kindergartner. Most of them go up through second grade. The sites that I use go up through second grade, so I knew where to go when there were other resources that I needed but didn't necessarily have access through the K-12 program. Something I was extremely happy about when it came time to do things like sight words, and when it came time to do things like further study on like name, birthdays, getting all those things very firm so that they weren't intimidated. And then, and to supplement that as well, were sites that I could go that I knew teachers used in order to give other teachers and other educators access to materials that they would use in class. I was extremely happy to have that homeschool background and to know what those things were, just in case there was a gap or two that I wanted to fill for myself. All of this is grand, but the great part, the part that I did not expect, I guess, the part that was unexpected and that I could not have prepared for, even if I had, a year in advance to do so, is something like COVID-19 coming to the States and just basically wreaking havoc on all the systems that we have become so accustomed to using and to some degree have taken for granted. If my child had been in a traditional school setting, then she would have missed about a third of her educational year for her kindergarten year. But as it stands, we are 2 weeks away from a virtual kindergarten graduation, and she has been excellent at it. We have absolute great days, and then we have absolute bad days, which is, to be expected. I mean, school is still school. But I find myself extremely grateful that I had used this option as a means to educate her, because where some parents are trying to fill these gaps, and you may or may not have a homeschooling background, you may or may not have had educational access to other resources that could help you supplement them. I don't have that issue. And I feel like it's very important to say this for parents who have chosen to either public or private school your child, you're not doing your child a disservice. You know, if that is the best thing that works for your household, works for the education of your child, works for your sanity, then do that thing, because you do a greater disservice by deciding to homeschool or virtual school your child in a situation that you aren't comfortable with or that you felt guilted into. It's a lot of work, you know, and it's a lot of fun some days, but it does take maneuvering around in order to accommodate your students. And if you have multiple kids like I do, that's an added level of built-in routines that you have to create to make sure that everyone is occupied and still getting a lot from their day. So don't feel any guilt if you're the parent who is like, I'm never going to homeschool again after this. Like, I'm never doing it. I don't want to. My child hates it. I hate it. It's not fun. We don't know what we're doing. Don't feel bad. Like, you don't have to have any guilt or responsibility in that feeling. What you have decided, what you have recognized, is that there is a particular stopgap. There's a particular boundary that you have established. And you say, you know what, on this side are the teachers in my child's education, and I'm happy with the education that I'm receiving. I'm happy with the contact I'm receiving from my teachers. I'm happy with the way that my child is responding as a student, and I don't want to disrupt that anymore. So as soon as we can, I'm going back to being a public school or private school or whatever situation parent. There is no shame or guilt in that. That is a decision that is good because you did it with considering your child and considering your household and your household needs. It's always a good decision. But if you are a parent who recognize that you still have some reservations about sending your child back to school in, say, August or whenever schools reopen, or having homeschooled for this amount of time has allowed you to consider that maybe this is a viable option for your family, but you're not sure where to start, I would say look into a K12 school. Most of the states have them, and if they don't have K12, they have some kind of virtual charter school equivalent. You just want to make sure that they are meeting the standards and that you are still getting an equivalent education for your child as you would if you would send them to the public school of your choice or the private school of your choice. And if they are falling short, you can find places that will supplement that and still give you the support that you need in order to say that your child is receiving a great education and also being treated as a whole student and having what they need in order to be a successful student now, throughout their career, their academic career, and on into adulthood. So I hope that with all the information that I've just given you, that you recognize that you have a lot of say in how your child is educated. And should something like a COVID-19 continue through the year, or should it ever populate again, you can find ways to supplement your child through a program like this that does not require them to be in maybe a brick and mortar school. I would love to give you more information on this, and I will give you more information on this because it's something I feel strongly about. And as soon as I do, I'll drop those links in the description, and I'll drop those links in the description. Until then, talk to you soon, Lovemuffins. Have a great day.